Okay, hi there. This is our post-imperialism lesson for our global contemporary unit. We will be talking about two artworks for this that have to deal with kind of the post-colonial and post-imperial world. Our first artwork is Trade. Its secondary title is Gifts for Trading Land with White People by Jaune Quick-to-See Smith, 1992, oil and mixed media on canvas. And then our second artwork is Pisupo Lua Afe, which is Corned Beef 2000 by Michel Tuffery, 1994, mixed media. So go ahead in your notebook and find Trade number 233. We are going to start with a video of Jaune Quick-to-See Smith talking about her artwork and her life and kind of her history and background as a Native American. Oh, just like normal. Nothing new here. Okay, here we go. I think it's gonna work now.
In the paintings, drawings, prints, and public art of Jaune Quick-to-See Smith, her Native American ancestry reveals images of earth, animals, and nature. Jaune creates a cultural bridge to engage people with her concern for human rights. Jaune was born at the St. Ignatius Mission on the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Reservation in Montana. She is a member of the Flathead Nation. Today she lives with her husband in a beautifully restored adobe home with a large studio for her prolific work.
My father was a horse trader, and it was 1940. Life was very, very difficult for Indian people at that time. So early on, I learned responsibility, that I had to grow up fairly quickly and learn how to survive. Growing up with my father and the racism that he faced as a child, we were told to leave. We don't serve Indians here, please leave. My father's influence and my tribe's influence on my worldviews about sustainability play a very important role in my work.
Jaune pursued her education while raising her family. She got her BFA from Framingham State College and her master's from the University of New Mexico.
They had in those days, a big Native American Studies department, which was my driving interest. I was going to use my art, be a teacher, because I didn't think I could make a living as an artist.
Jaune taught and served on the board of Indian High School in Albuquerque. She also began to show her work, achieving early success at galleries in Albuquerque, Santa Fe, and New York.
I was able to make a living as an artist and could travel and lecture at universities. That was another piece of my education, was traveling to all these conferences with Amalia Mesa Baines and Faith Ringgold and Judy Chicago and Lucy Lepard and all of these movers and shakers in that whole community.
Jaune also draws inspiration from frequent visits home to the Salish Kootenai Reservation in Montana and from spiritual ceremonies she attends on other reservations.
You're taking in the goodness for yourself. You're taking in the communal goodness from everyone there. Everything has a life, is how Indian people believe, and you can never keep everything forever.
Jaune's respect for life, nature, and justice resonates throughout her work and touches all who experience her vision. Her work is in important museum collections around the world. She was a judge for the Oklahoma City Bombing Memorial, received numerous prestigious awards, and will be the featured artist in the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum's Living Artists of Distinction exhibition in 2012.
Okay, I think a really special thing about our global contemporary unit is that we get the opportunity to kind of see and hear from artists from our 250, which we could not necessarily do with some of our older units because those artists are dead. So Jaune Quick-to-See Smith is a contemporary artist, so she is living and working today. This is our artwork that we have in our image set, so some context that we got from that video and then additional context just about herself as an artist and her intent and purpose as an artist. So obviously, like we saw in that video, she is a Native American artist. and she was part of the Flathead Nation, which is in western Montana, parts of Idaho, British Columbia, and Wyoming. So just think out west. Her father and tribe, their views play into sustainability and kind of her beliefs into her art. Her father faced a lot of racism when she was a child, like she said, and she draws artistic inspiration from her tribe and reservation and other tribes in the U.S. She wanted to be an artist for as long as she could remember, and she believes that art has the ability to transport her to a place without violence or hunger. A lot of Native American tribes really struggle with poverty, violence, addiction as the result of a lot of different factors, but mostly coming down to the way that they were kind of treated and relocated by white settlers and colonists. We'll get to that in a second. More about her: she enjoys charcoal drawing. A lot of her artworks are mixed media, so we'll see paint and like newspaper clippings like you saw in that video. And she was actually told when she was younger to kind of switch jobs because there was no way that she could be an artist and be a woman at the same time. And I think towards the end of that video, when we saw all of her kind of awards and accomplishments, we know that's not true today. So, taking all of that context and all of that kind of purpose, she, as an artist, confronts us, the viewer, with the devastating impact of the European contact and quote unquote, you can't see me air quoting, but I am, discovery of America and colonization and relocation of Native Americans, and the ongoing consequences of that history and stereotypes about Native Americans. So I want for you, hopefully you've been looking at this artwork as I've been talking about it, but just take a second and look at trade. Look at the canvas part and then the objects that are kind of strung up above it. So in trade, we have obviously kind of this big long canvas here. I think it might actually be 3 canvases because you can kind of see a seam here, but for our purposes, we'll just call it one canvas. So on that canvas, we have large kind of painterly color blocks. It's very gestural and you can see how it's dripping on there. She was very much influenced by our abstract expressionists like Willem de Kooning, Jackson Pollock, in the way that paint is kind of applied in this very vigorous, messy, drippy, energetic way. And she has kind of applied her paint over these newspaper articles. And if we start to look a little bit closer, we can pick out some imagery relating to Native American people. Okay, so we see this canoe in the middle of the canvas, and the canvas is actually supposed to be, 3 separate canvases, kind of like a medieval triptych, which is a set of 3 canvases. We looked at Andy Warhol and how he used 2 canvases as this kind of allusion to religious imagery also, so kind of a reference to that. But we have this canoe, which was used by Native American people for travel and transportation and trade also. They would kind of navigate waterways on their canoes so that way they could trade with white people, European people, during kind of early colonial times. So we have this canoe, but it's not in a river, right? It's just kind of sitting there. It's almost stuck. This artwork was made made with the 500th anniversary of Columbus's arrival in North America, which was 1492. So this was made in 1992, so 500 years later. And it was this non-celebration. We know with Christopher Columbus came a lot of negative historical consequences, so there was this non-celebration, and Jaune Quick-to-See Smith made this artwork to be part of that. So we have the different layers of newspaper and paint that suggest, history and its complexity and the different kind of events and decisions and choices during this time. The use of red, which we see a lot through the canvas, is often associated with Native American heritage. It's kind of dripping like blood here, which alludes to maybe war and sacrifice. And the brush strokes on it, those kind of energetic gestural brush strokes, communicate kind of deep emotions and chaos. And then if we look closer at some of the newspaper articles that we have, those are about the Native American struggles with alcoholism, crime, poverty, addiction, and unemployment. So kind of bringing to light all of the things that happened as the result of Christopher Columbus on this non-celebration of the 500th anniversary. And then, like I said earlier, the final layer is this outline of a canoe that suggests the possibility of trade. This is what they would have used to trade, but the canoe is kind of stuck. It's stationary. Now, if we go back up to the top of this canvas, we have all of these items that are strung up at the top. I'm going to give you a second just to kind of look. So these are photos, there's toys, there's baseball hats, there's very kind of cliche and stereotypical like Native American costume items here, and all these different kind of media things comment on the depiction of Native American culture through pop culture items. So these very like cultural items like a feathered headdress that have been turned into these souvenirs, these costumes, and they no longer have that true meaning or authenticity. This is the kind of thing that we talk about when people say cultural appropriation, right? The idea of taking something from someone else's culture, like a Native American feathered headdress, and using it in a different context, like a costume or something that's used for play, not in its original cultural context. So these things are tourist goods and culturally appropriated goods, and they also kind of allude to this story that I have for you. So there are fictitious stories that go kind of like this. So Native Americans were lured away from their lands with cheap trade goods, like some of these things, but obviously these are contemporary things, but kind of cheap things like we're seeing here. The Dutch supposedly exchanged the Native Americans $24 worth of guilders for the entire island of Manhattan, which is New York City basically. And if this deal were reversed today, the Dutch would absolutely never accept that, and that just emphasizes how they took advantage of the Native Americans. So if we just take a step back and go back to our entire title, it is trade, gifts for trading land with white people. So the idea of taking all of these things that Americans, white people have made from the Native Americans' culture and kind of giving it back to them in this non-celebration of the 500th anniversary. If we talk more about kind of cultural appropriation and Native Americans, just to wrap up, this is a really good video that I have of changethemascot.org, which is a Native American organization that is aiming at kind of ridding the world of stereotypical and appropriated imagery that we often see, not only with some of our kind of really big and famous sports teams, but also just like culturally, if we think like Halloween costumes or paraphernalia or anything kind of like that. So I'm going to play this video for you.
Proud, forgotten, Indian, Navajo, Blackfoot, Inuit, and Sioux, survivor, spiritualist, patriot, Sitting Bull, Hiawatha, and Jim Thorpe. Mother, father, son, daughter, chief, Apache, Pueblo, Choctaw, Chippewa, and Crow. Underserved, struggling, resilient. Squanto, Red Cloud, Tecumseh, and Crazy Horse. Rancher, teacher, doctor, soldier. Seminole, Seneca, Mohawk, and Creek. Mills, Will Rogers, Geronimo. Unyielding, strong, indomitable. Native Americans call themselves many things. The one thing they don't.
Okay, I think that video is very powerful and it speaks for itself. It says, this is who we see ourselves as, this is who we are and identify as. The way that we have been depicted in the media and in pop culture is inappropriate. It is offensive, it is culturally appropriating. I want to be very clear that Native Americans view the term Redskins as derogatory, just so that way we can all be aware and be better people because of that. So that is a phrase that we should not use. But if we go back to Jaune Quick-to-See Smith's artwork, just very briefly, it's this kind of, testament to this is who we are as a result of you, as a result of all of these things, and this is not really who we identify as, with all of these kind of kitschy items, all of these issues, these newspaper clippings of the impacts of colonialism on the Native American community. Her other artworks are also very interesting. This one here is a map of the United States, and you can see some of the states have their names on them, and then some of them do not. So she purposely kind of washed out the names of the states that no longer have their Native American names on them. I don't know exactly what this one is about, but it's hanging in my classroom and I miss it. And then this one was from the video also, and I just like the kind of painterly kind of checkerboard that we have on here. I think that speaks to the abstract expressionism movement. This video that I have up here is a Khan Academy video all about that map artwork if you are interested in watching that. So that is Jaune Quick-to-See Smith's artworks. I know that was kind of a lot of context and a lot of kind of deep thinking, but a really good artwork for us to start with today. Our second artwork is a very interesting artwork. This is 237, Pisupo Lua Afe. So I'll give you a second to find that. And this is called Corned Beef 2000. Now don't get that confused with the year that this was created. This was created in 1994 by Michel Tuffery, and it's mixed media. So Tuffery, our artist, is a New Zealand artist, and he had a Samoan mom and a Rarotongan and Tahitian father. So if we think back to our Pacific unit, we're kind of connecting back to our other units that we've talked about so far. So Pacific unit, Pacific Islander artist here and from New Zealand. He works in a lot of different media. He does printmaking, sculpture, painting, set design, performance pieces, and our bull here is a very interesting piece of his. So I have, and I apologize in advance for this video, it's kind of dorky, but it's a good video and you can see this artwork in a gallery setting. So here we go.
Most of us love getting prezzies, but in Samoa, this takes on a new meaning. In Pacific cultures, gifts are an important part of special occasions like weddings, funerals, and feasts. One of their favourite presents is also a popular food. It comes already wrapped, not in paper, but in tin. And it's the curious material of artist Michel Tuffery.
This bull is Pisupo Lua Afe, Corned Beef 2000. It's by artist Michel Tuffery, and it's one of our more iconic or popular sculptures here at Te Papa. Pisupo is a name that was given to all tin foods way back in the colonial period. When they first introduced tin food to Samoa, it was in the form of pea soup. So Samoans added the O to the end of pea soup, and it was called Pisupo. So all tin food picked up that name, Pisupo, even though this, of course, is made out of corned beef tins. Pisupo Lua Afe was the first in a number of sculptures that Michel made based on the cow, if you like, or the steer. And he went on to make two robotic cows that clashed in a big performance in Civic Square in Wellington in the 90s. There was fire, there was light, there was big groups of people banging drums. I think there's several ways you can read this object. Some people are offended by it being in the museum. You know, corned beef is a food that, while prestigious in certain occasions in the Pacific Islands, it's also a food that causes obesity and health problems. It's high in fat and salt. And so there is a health issue tied up with this sculpture. But there's also a story here about the way in which Pacific Island peoples become dependent on these imported commodities. They become integral to the social and cultural life of their society. Michel Tuffery is one of the most prolific artists of Pacific Island descent here in New Zealand. He's worked really hard over many years and has lots of interests in history, environment, culture, and he's from a mixed background himself. He is Samoan, English, Cook Island, Tahitian descent. He's one of these people who's multicultural in his background, but he's also multicultural in his approach to his work.
Tuffery has made art out of an icon of the modern Polynesian diet. It helps us understand the history of Pisupo and Samoa. Not to mention, it's a great example of creative recycling.
Okay, good video kind of explaining this artwork. So, this is a life-size bowl made out of flattened corned beef cans. How wild is that? So why would he choose to do this? So Michel Tuffery, being a Pacific Islander, is very aware of kind of the history and impact of imperialism on the Pacific Islands. So Cattle was introduced to New Zealand and the Pacific after colonialism, imperialism, and they had never had any cattle on these islands before, and it had a really, really negative impact environmentally. It impacted kind of the plant life there, the landscapes, the waterways. So the bull itself is this kind of symbol of environmental destruction and concern. And then the corned beef itself, Pacific Islanders had never had any sort of packaged food before contact with the Europeans. And so, like the video said, canned goods were imported even though they had all of these kind of fresh resources and they had cattle kind of introduced to them. The first canned good that was introduced to the Pacific Islanders in Samoa was a tinned can of pea soup. And then the kind of generic term for any canned meat, they then transformed into Pisupo, adding the O to the end of it because no Samoan word can end in a consonant, so they always add O to the ends of their words. So that's where we get Pisupo with the O on the end. And these canned goods became so not only important to their kind of daily living and eating, but they were also this special occasion gift. Like corned beef began to be given like tapa, that kind of special celebratory cloth that we looked at in our Pacific Island unit, or our Pacific unit. And corned beef started to be given to people on special occasions like weddings and funerals and feasts. Now, I don't know about you, but that would not be what I would expect on a special occasion like that. So here is a picture of kind of just what canned corned beef looks like in our bowl from a different angle. So with the canned food, we have kind of health concerns that come with canned food. They are high in saturated fat, salt, and cholesterol, which really contribute to diabetes and heart disease. Pacific Islanders previously had diets of locally grown fruits and vegetables, seafood, coconut products, all which are very kind of natural and healthier. And so once they were introduced to canned foods, they started to have more health issues, more health concerns like diabetes and heart disease. So this whole piece is just this kind of commentary on, you know, the impact of this very foreign thing to this group of people and this culture, and how it became so important to them too. Like this was a thing that was so special that they would give it like at weddings. So it's this kind of lighthearted but very ironic piece that kind of combines the ideas of environmental impact, health impact, what cultures value, and then we also have the angle of recycling, right? He's taking these corned beef cans and kind of upcycling them into an artwork. So it's this ironic commentary on how foreign imported products have replaced the local Pacific foods. And so with this piece, we kind of have the question of, does foreign intervention encourage independence or actually foster dependency? And that's kind of a big global question that we have to ask ourselves as we look at some of the things that are happening around the world with countries that were imperialized, like these Pacific Islands and most of Africa. If Europeans and white people in general had never colonized these lands, what would they be like today? What lasting impacts have imperialism had on these countries, even though we are decades past imperialism? The Pacific Islands are still struggling with kind of healthy living and the environmental impact of cattle and corned beef. So just questions for us to kind of be thinking about in our world. So that is Corned Beef 2000, our little bull friend. I think that he is so fun. In the video, it talked about how he had 2 of them at one point and they would fight because they were like animatronic. I would have loved to have seen that. But those are our 2 artworks for today. I do not have a art history challenge for you today formally, but informally I just want for you to think about, have you ever considered the impact of imperialism on the world? Maybe other countries? If so, was it because of a news article? Was it because of another class? Is this something that's completely new to you? Even though this is our post-imperialism day, tomorrow, I think it's tomorrow, I don't know. Tomorrow we'll talk about this artwork here, which also very much has to do with post-imperialism in Africa. So just something to chew on. That's it. See you guys next time.